Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 100. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. 100 episodes. Let's go, my man. Oh, that's kind of crazy. You know, this started with the, conversation between you and I casually that was prompted to me from a few other people asking me if I was ever going to do a podcast. And for years, I was just always saying, no, I have no desire to do a podcast, not going to do a podcast. I wasn't trying to be like Jocko's podcast or Joe Rogan's or Sean Ryan's or, any of the big names. I think when people start podcasts, that's what they're chasing, and that's good. That's fine. Like, hey, if you have the ability, the means, the resources, the dedication, the discipline to do that, that's awesome, because those podcasts provide a lot of value. But for me, doing a podcast, it wasn't ever the intent of I'm trying to be like this big name. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to provide value to listeners. I wanted to be able to share stories and lessons that I'd learned, from my time in the military. I've been able to share those on different podcasts like Andy Frisella's podcast, Jocko's podcast, Mike Ritland's podcast, and a handful of other podcasts out there that I'm thankful that I was guest on. But I guess I was just hesitant because of my own insecurities of being perceived of doing it for the wrong intentions, and then doing the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast, which was awesome to be able to be a part of that when it was first kicking off. And I know it's something I need to prioritize again, of getting back in there with Isaac and Kramer and you, and Josh when he's in town, and, just being able to be a part of that again. And I for me, seeing the value that podcast was providing through faith and helping people grow closer to the Lord, and some of the funny times that we'd have on it, just talking about just different bros things and jiu-jitsu and barbecue and food and just shenanigans. Finger guns that you brought up that one time that Brent still struggles with. And so the more I thought about it, I recognized, okay, hey, if this is something that can be done right, I should do it. It's like Jocko and Leif and other people have prompted me to do other things that I've pushed back and resisted on, that I've actually had to really think about and reflect on and say, okay, hey, maybe I should give it some actual thought, some attention, some energy, and see if it's something that that could come to fruition. Am I doing things that I should be doing, that the Lord wants me to do, that I'm capable of doing. And the more I thought about it, like, this podcast fits some of those things. And because of our relationship, Lucas, that we had from Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, and me seeing, okay, cool, this is what we can do. We can do it the right way. And then just our friendship growing closer because of that podcast, I recognize, like, hey, this is actually something I would want to do with you. And I think this is something that we could do long term. And, then there's always like that initial, reservation of making a commitment, because, hey, one episode every Friday. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to do an episode once a month or once every other week. That would have been very easy for us to do. And actually would be easily attainable for sustainment. But once you get into the rhythm of doing the episodes weekly, and one of the things I know I need to get back to is the YouTube exclusives. Just haven't made that time a priority for those things in this season. But man, 100 episodes, we've never missed a Friday. And
we've had some Friday afternoons. There's been a couple where we missed that Friday morning, but we got them Friday afternoon.
It came out on Friday.
We never missed a Friday.
And that was in the, I remember I believe you and I talked about this, or maybe I'm making up in my brain about, like, hey, we want them to come out every Friday morning. And hey, if something was to happen on the technology side or the editing side, and which would be technology side, but if it wasn't able to be up in the morning, it was like, cool, no factor. As long as it can be there by Friday, cool. Now I know the ones that were the afternoon was maybe an inconvenience to people that where it's part of their day. They start their day that way on their drive or whatever else like that. But the engagement that we've had from the listeners has been awesome. The comments on YouTube, the comments on Instagram, the support people have given us has been really awesome.
Yeah, very literally thankful. From all over the world.
It's crazy.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Is that there are, people globally that are sending us something every week, just like the impact that we've had and all that stuff has been super cool.
So I was getting ready to come here, finishing up a bunch of calls. Crazy busy Monday, and no, it's Monday evening, and I was like, maybe I should throw on a polo or button up, just have fun for the 100th episode. And then I was looking at some of my different polos, and I was like, cool, the Hooli Golf ones, those are legit choices, and
Sure.
they have pretty cool, like themes, I guess you would say. And then I have a few other ones that are, like, pretty bright and extravagant. And I was like, oh, man, that would be fun. And then I come in here, and you're in a button-up and a suit jacket, just making me look bad.
Well, I have respect for the 100th episode. That's what it all boils down to. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting.
But we also are at different ranks, and so because of that, there are different dress codes for the different ranks.
Is that the NCC dress code?
This is for the 100th episode. This is how the NCCs have to dress.
Dang.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a big deal for us.
I should have asked better questions, because had I known that, I could have put out something ahead of time so that when our NCCs are listening, they can suit up.
They can suit up. That's it, man. Yeah, show up and suit up for the NCC Mafia. That's how we got to get there.
That's funny. I know we have a few thoughts on where we want to go with this episode.
Yeah.
And a few announcements we'll make for the podcast. But, we were doing the EO Academy session earlier today, and towards the end, we had a little bit of time for Q&As, and Jocko asked, hey, anybody else have any more questions? Nobody rogered up, and I asked him a question. I said, hey, I have a question. Actually, I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of the participants would enjoy. And I asked him, I said, hey, knowing what you know now, if you were to go back 3 years, knowing where your kids were and where they're at now, what would you do different? And his response, for me to recap it, was just be more intentional with the building of the relationships, which he's always building those relationships. And Jamie said something that I absolutely loved that I've actually talked to a few people about, because parents struggle with this, is like, people say, I don't want to be my kid's friend, or I'm not supposed to be my kid's friend. I'm supposed to be their parent. And what Jamie brought up, and she said, and I'm phrasing what she said, is that should be the same, because, but what she said, she goes, what type of friends do you have around you? Because if you're thinking being a friend to your kids is just giving them whatever they want, whenever they want, that's actually not being a friend. And she said, the friends I have surrounding me call me out on my stuff, and they give me course corrections and give me advice and give me guidance. And that's what parenting is. And that's what leadership is. And, as a boss, it's the same thing. You can have a good relationship with your kids and still parent them. It's about the relationship and giving them guidance. And, so I think people are just been so used to, they probably heard their parents say, well, I'm not supposed to be your friend. I'm supposed to be your parent. And I understand where people come from that. But if you're doing parenting right and you're leading your kids right, you can also be their friend, and you can be a good guiding person in their life to give them the proper correction and guidance the right way. So just want to bring that up and kind of just see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, obviously my kids are young, so we're always in shifting phases throughout the day. And I think there are times when all I provide for them is comfort. There are times where it's only instruction, and then there's times where I'm just the jungle gym / playmate. So it really varies on the time of day and whether or not they're in the proper mood for whatever thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially having two boys. But the way I've always heard parenting described, and I think you did a great job of it there, is that, there's a certain part of our kids' lives where we're the police. There's a certain part where we're coaches. There's a certain part where we're consultants. But throughout all of that, no matter what that phase is, we're supposed to model for them what good manhood, womanhood, what it's like to be a good friend is like. So whether it is, you're trying to model what it's like to be a godly man or a godly husband or wife, spouse, whatever that is, we're supposed to be modeling that for them, because they're going to pick up on our habits, good and bad.
Yes.
One of those things that I really got from my parents was what it meant to be a good friend. Because the relationship that we had, my dad, before I got married, he was the one that it wasn't one of my close buddies. It was my dad that I wanted to go do like special stuff with, right? So like the last Cowboy game at Texas Stadium, I spent an ungodly amount of money on tickets so that he and I could go to that together. The first game at the new stadium, that's what it was. There's some stuff with the Rangers. Dirk Nowitzki's last game as a Maverick. Those were things that, for us, sports was one of those things that we watched a lot together, and neither one of us are as into it now as we were whenever I was growing up. But part of the reason he was so into it is because I was.
That's cool.
And he made those things a priority because they were things that I wanted to do and that I wanted to watch. And so as I got older, when I was thinking of like, oh, I really want to go do this, who would I go do this with? It was my dad.
That's cool.
Because we had that relationship. But it also, whenever I became a pastor, particularly when I became a pastor of the church he was going to, it was one of those that there was this interesting like passage of going from being taught by my dad to him and I both realizing that, God had gifted me and the Holy Spirit was moving me to a place where I was going to be able to teach him, which was a really intimidating thing.
Wow.
In the midst of that journey and that transition, and from, being his child to now, being the pastor of his church, he's never stopped calling me out on my bullcrap. And he, anywhere along the way. And whether it is, mistakes that I make as a pastor, leadership errors that I make, whether it's things that I'm doing in my relationship with my wife that could be, unwise, or maybe I said something as a joke, and, being a person who's a little sharp-tongued with sarcasm, that he calls me out and is like, hey, listen, that's not an okay thing for you to say to her. You need to go make that right. I'm like, well, it was a joke. And he's like, it will be a joke maybe the first 2 times you say it. But if you keep that up, eventually that's going to do something that causes hurt. Trust me.
Wow.
Like, go fix it.
That's cool.
And then, with my kids now, that it's all that. But it's been that way since I was young. So I think, yeah, he definitely fulfilled all of these roles, but he was also a friend all the way along the way and taught me what I should be looking for in my other friendships, because none of the close friends that I have, I will phrase it like, they don't let me get away with anything.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those that, if something real is going on in my life, that their first thing isn't to like, hey, let's go to the bar and drown our sorrows, because they don't know how to deal with those things or don't think it's important for me to process that stuff or aren't going to be there. It's totally different, man. So I think it's a phenomenal point.
Yeah, that's cool.
That Jamie makes, yeah.
Well, it just made me think about like the relationship I had with my parents when we were growing up, and I had a good, healthy relationship with my parents, a good friendship with them. And I think back to like all the things that my parents did with us and the things that they did for us. I'm just so thankful. Yeah. I'm so thankful that I had that from my parents. And I also had it from my aunts and uncles. And I also had it from my grandparents, and I just, as I reflected more on that statement that Jamie said today, it made me thankful for what I had. It made me think about how I'm parenting and making sure that I'm parenting the right way, where there is that healthy relationship, friendship, and guidance and coaching and mentorship, and, spiritually and physically and emotionally to my kids. But then also it made me really think about some of the relationships that I have with my friends, and I wonder if I'm doing that there properly.
Yeah.
Like, am I giving the proper feedback to friends when I know that they need it? Because maybe I don't, because it's an awkward, hard conversation. And me, and we've talked about this, I don't like conflict.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to conflict. I've always been like that way. That's wrong.
Yeah.
Anyways, whatever.
There's extra words in that sentence, but it makes sense.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You and your suit. Judging me.
I look like a sportscaster. I feel more like I should be announcing than I should be podcasting.
That's amazing. But yeah, I just kind of want us to just open up and just think about that. Like, hey, as parents, as friends, as leaders, you can do your job as a parent, as a leader, and as a friend while maintaining a friendship, but also giving proper course corrections. Because if you truly loved that person, why would you not give that? And if we think about relationships, trust, listen, respect, influence, and care, the last one being care, like if you really care about your people, you're going to lead them. You're going to correct them. You're going to have hard conversations with them. You're going to guide them. You're going to give them suggestions. You're going to let them fail in a controlled environment. You're going to let people do all those things. And, so as a parent, you should absolutely be your kid's friend, because friends don't let friends go astray.
I would agree with that 100%. And I think it's one of those things that, like, when we look at the things that make up a relationship, right, that all of these things have to be reciprocated. And I don't just mean that, like, I have to trust you, I have to listen to you, I have to respect you, I have to influence you and care for you. But that I also have to trust that we will be able to have a hard conversation.
Yeah.
I have to listen to the things that you say. And particularly when it comes to, like, the bookends in the middle, right? The trust, respect, and care is, if we're not willing to have a hard conversation with somebody, it means that we don't trust that they can handle whatever information that we have for them. So that actually shows that there's not trust in the relationship.
Yeah.
It shows that we don't have respect for them because we don't really believe that they want to be a better person, and it wouldn't bother us if they weren't. And then finally, it shows ourselves and them that we don't really care for them because we'll allow them to continue to live in a destructive pattern or have a destructive tendency. So I think those three in particular, like, listening and influence, are so much more about the other person, but trust, respect, and care are things that go both ways.
Yes.
And with those in particular, that they're so dependent upon one another and so evident when you do and don't have them, particularly when it comes to having difficult conversations, right? And uncomfortable conversations, difficult conversations. There was a book years ago that I read by a lady named Susan Scott, who it was called Fierce Conversations, and it was like how to do conflict resolution, but also how to have the conversations that you're uncomfortable with having.
Yeah.
That, it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter where you fall in an organizational structure or where you are in a friendship, that those things are never comfortable.
Never.
They never are. But that's where, trust as the starting place really finds its biggest foothold. Is I know, hey, you know what, this person is doing, this thing. Maybe it's like we talked about a couple of episodes ago. Maybe it's something that they've done that hurt you unknowingly, right? When you didn't return that guy's call, and that was something that bothered him, and so he decided to have a conversation with you about it. Like, that could, that's not an easy thing to do.
I was so thankful.
Yeah,
so thankful that he had that conversation with me.
Yep. And it's easier to make a joke about it than it is to have the conversation, and that's. Particularly when it comes to that stuff, we've got a group of friends that are all in a group chat. And I think most people have some type of group chat that they're in, right? Yeah. But there's a guy in our group chat that never calls anybody back. And he'll always, we'll have a conversation with him for a couple of minutes, and he'll be like, all right, yeah, okay, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back, and we'll pick this up where we left off. And, there's all the gifts of skeletons, and it's like waiting for a call back from Scott or whatever, right? So it's kind of a funny thing, but the truth of the matter is that none of us have actually sat down and been like, hey, listen, this is something that actually bothers us. Like, I know we've made a joke about it, and now because we've joked about it so much that it's almost become like a permissible thing where it's an expectation. And he is at the point now where he's like, well, why would I call you back? You're just going to make a joke about it anyway. So, like, there's no benefit to not calling, to making a correction, because now it's like, oh, it's a funny, quirky thing in his personality that if anybody were to just sit down and be like, hey, no, the reason that they're joking about this is because none of us have the emotional maturity or the guts to actually tell you, hey, this is something that's bothering us and is causing the breakdown of our friendship. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so we'll just continue to joke about it. But that applies to so many other things in our lives, and becoming comfortable having challenging conversations and trusting the other person enough to be able to have those conversations. Maybe that's the jumping off point for what we're talking about, because I've got written down that, and then I want to do some, if time allows, kind of peel back the curtain on some of the conversations that we've had in relation to the podcast. Well, let's start with this one. Like, how do you get comfortable having those conversations? As a person who, you said you don't like them, you don't like conflict, but now at this point in your life, you are, because of the business that you're in, you're having to have those kinds of conversations all the time with people. How do you become comfortable having those conversations? How do you overcome that obstacle?
I would say repetition. And so practicing the conversations beforehand, role-playing conversations. That's one of the things that we do at Echelon Front is we help clients understand, like, okay, hey, here's a framework for having a hard conversation that allows you to take ownership while identifying the problem, explaining the consequences, and then helping create a solution. Whether you provide a solution for something you did wrong or helping guide them to create a solution for something that they've been doing wrong or not doing right. And so when I take the time to talk through that conversation beforehand, whether it's like I call you and say, hey man, I'm getting ready to call Josh, it's a frustrating conversation I'm going to have. Could you play Josh, and here's the resistance I need you to have. And then so you are just playing a role, providing resistance and or pushback and maybe a little bit of conflict or maybe just shutting down or whatever it is. That allows me to get comfortable with that conversation beforehand. And then sometimes, actually maybe most of the time, if I'm really thinking about it, is when you do that a few times, you recognize, oh, this isn't going to be that bad of a conversation. And then you go have that hard conversation and it turns out to not be as bad as you thought. Mm-hmm. Because I think one of the things that people do is they put so much extra stress on stuff than is needed. Like, we tend to look at things in the worst case scenario, so we think things are going to be worse than they actually are. So that's why we delay doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's just jumping in and doing it. Make the commitment. Have the hard conversations with somebody that you trust. Role play, practice, get your words together, and also I think the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to have. So if I was just thinking, oh man, okay, I need to call Lucas, this is going to suck, and I just call you without thinking about what I actually want to talk about, without actually maybe writing down my talking points to keep me on track, then I'm going to struggle with that conversation. But if I write down my talking points and I get on the phone with you and say, hey, bud, I really appreciate, you jump on the call. Hey, I just want to let you know, like, I need to address a few things that have been bothering me, that I'm frustrated with. And I just want you to know, like, I understand that this is 100% on me, but I need to talk through some stuff with you to help get a little resolution. I have a few things written down. If you could do me a favor, let me just at least get to all my talking points and then provide any feedback that you have, because I know you're going to have feedback, which is going to be awesome, which I want and need. But if you give it to me in the middle of me talking, it's going to throw me off track. So if you could just let me get my points and then we'll just have a back and forth conversation from that point, that would be very helpful.
Do you think, like we talked about outlines and prompts, role plays and those kinds of things, do you think that those are another obstacle for people? And here's why I ask. Well, I'll frame my question in context. There are a lot of people that when we're coaching them how to have hard conversations, how to have difficult conversations, they're like, why would I go write it down? Then the conversation that I have is not going to be authentic. It's going to be whatever I have written down.
Okay. I understand their perspective, but I would try to explain to them that whatever you're writing down are your thoughts and talking points. Therefore, it is authentic and it will help you be prepared. Do you want to have a successful conversation or a unsuccessful conversation? That's what I would ask them. I would say, do you want to be successful? Yes. Okay, cool. Well, do you believe that if you have your talking points written down, it helps you stay on track and hit all of those important talking points? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. That's why I would write it down. Yeah. And I would explain to them, hey, and also if I did have somebody say that to them, I would respond and say, okay, valid concern. Like I just, and run through those things. And then I would also share with them how actually writing down notes and talking points from me has helped me have a successful conversation. And it was an authentic conversation. And that person recognized that I took it serious enough to write down my points so that we could have a healthy, thorough conversation.
Yeah,
that's an ego thing.
Yeah, it's 100% an ego thing.
And if I have a good enough relationship with that person, I'm going to explain to them, hey, what you're feeling is ego driven. Your ego is a liar. And your ego is telling you that you don't need to do these things because it's going to be perceived the wrong way. Nobody's going to perceive it that way. You're the only one thinking that.
Yep.
So,
yeah, there was a guy recently, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said and use it in a context that it wasn't intended for.
Okay.
But I do think it's appropriate, is that preparation doesn't diminish authenticity, it protects it. Because it prevents you from getting on the call or getting, to the table and then losing your nerve, number one. And number two, it prevents you from going and chasing all of the rabbits that are around you.
yeah.
Like it forces you to think through things and to address stuff. And it does take a little bit of humility because we always go worst case scenario.
Yes.
And one of the things that people have been proven time and time again to be is that we're terrible at mind reading. Like we think we know so much about everyone else and that we've had all of these conversations, whether it's with our spouse or a friend or somebody else, that we will have run through this difficult conversation that we're supposed to have 10,000 times in our mind before the one time that we do it with them. But because we've run all of these scenarios and in so many, very like high performance groups, because people tend to be so competitive in those groups and they want to know every angle. They think that they've thought through all of it. And that because of that, they sort of decide to settle it within themselves instead of have the conversation. Mm-hmm. When the truth of the matter is that not only is this something that, like you said before, the majority of the time when you sit down and have the conversation with the person, it goes much more smoothly than you anticipated. But also when you start to do these things, when you start to use the outlines or the prompts, the role plays, you kind of realize the ridiculousness in some of those arguments that you created in your head.
Yep.
Then you're like, oh, they're definitely going to say this. And then you start having the conversation. You're like, that would be a really stupid thing for them to say. I don't know why I thought they would say something like this. Yeah. And then you're so many levels deep into your own head that you actually forget the point.
I was talking with Jocko one time about a similar type of situation, just assuming like all these things. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there talking. He's just smiling. He goes, the devil is a liar.
100%, man.
And there's so much truth to that. And I think, honestly, some of those like types of thoughts are definitely just little lies from the devil. Mm-hmm. Because if you were to go have that hard conversation and resolve conflict, guess what the devil doesn't want?
Restoration.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. 100%. What else you got over there?
Yeah, so...
Suit.
Yeah, thank you. With all of these, outlines, prompts, role plays, the big question, do we make things bigger in our heads? That is definitely it. I like the whole route that we're going with this. When we've rehearsed, we've written everything down, now it's time to have that talk, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Kirsten and I have used a lot is we go back to the workbooks that I've gotten in the musters.
Nice.
And we will literally we'll look at the page on the hard conversation framework, and if it's a problem between the two of us, we'll take the worksheet. I'll take the one from muster 17. She'll take the one from 20. We'll go and we'll spend about 15 minutes apart. We'll go through it and then come back and have a conversation. It's one of those things that we teach now. We've modified the way that we've taught it in our premarital counseling, because it used to be go for 15 minutes, go figure out what your part of the argument is, and then go there. And now we're like, nope, you're going to take your 15 minutes. You're going to do this worksheet. Or you're going to go through these 5 steps, what it takes to do this, and then you're going to come back together and do it. Huge. It's way more actionable that way, too.
So we have a muster coming up in December in Orlando.
In Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been to 2 musters.
I have. Yes, I would go to a third in Orlando. You don't.
Yeah. But from our listeners for our listeners that have not been to a muster, how much value? I mean, it's going to be hard for you to actually put an actual value on it.
Oh no, I know what these things cost, but from a lot of different angles and from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from, okay, the time you have to take off, the cost of the muster, the hotels, travel, all those things. I know it's hard to put a value on it, but the return on the investment that somebody makes to go to a muster, how high do you think it is? Because of what you just said right there. If you can use one thing from the muster to help your marriage be a little more stable, to improve the communication, which makes your marriage stronger, and it makes your quality of life better when you're not arguing and having conflicts at home, like, where do you place that value?
So let's break down muster costs really quick. You're looking at like a $2,800 ticket for an individual.
Yes. Which we've been told from other people that do big events that
it's insanely cheap.
Yeah, that like the guy was like making fun of Jocko. He goes, "Oh, you do those cheap events."
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. If you were to, I don't know, join a sales army, it's going to be 6 or 7 times that much.
Stop.
But
we will fight on episode 100.
So, hotel cost for 3 nights is probably going to be around $700.
Okay.
And then a reasonable flight in the U.S. if booked out 3 to 6 weeks, you're looking at about $300.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking total around $4,000 investment before you get to whatever you decide to eat or drink whenever you're there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you're
which is reasonable.
The muster.
Yeah.
Lunch and dinner is included.
Lunch and
they
dinner
have
are included,
a,
right?
A legitimate lunch.
Yeah. Oh, the
legitimate
food.
lunch.
The food there is amazing. But like if you
then
decide
get
you
after
wanna,
an hour that evening.
Yeah.
But okay, I get what you're saying.
Yep. So, and then most of the hotels have some type of breakfast, something that you could go get, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got coffee, you got Jocko white tea, and all those kinds of things, water that you can get in between. So most of those things are included. But if you decide to go offsite or whatever, those costs are yours. So, like literally for tickets to other events that are being put on that are marketed similarly, right? You're looking at typically costs between $10,000 and $25,000.
Yes.
So there's that aspect of it first and foremost from a dollars perspective. There's a baseball stat called WAR, called WAR, and it is it's wins over replacement. And the way the statistics work is that if you and I are both in a starting position, right? If you are, let's say you're a pitcher, and whenever you get hurt, I come in as your backup. Okay. How much better of a pitcher are you than I am? That's what wins over replacement essentially determines. Is that if you were starting, we might have had 10 wins, but because I started, we only had 7. Right? So your value in WAR is 3 wins, which for a baseball team is massive.
Okay.
Right? That's the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. 3 wins is the difference between whether or not you win a series or lose a series. And if JP's pitching 3 games, then you have a much higher potential of winning those games than I do. The reason that I put that in there is because when you talk about what you bring home from the muster, one of the things that is paramount is these conflict resolution practices. Like learning the hard conversation framework, learning how to invest in relationships, understanding that whenever you lead, that every part of that has to do with your relationships. You can't cover and move unless you have good relationships. You can't simplify unless you know exactly how your people want to interpret things and putting things in a language that they understand. You can't prioritize and execute unless you understand the priorities of the company, because you've got relationships with everybody in the other departments so that you really know what the priorities of the organization are. Even if you are the top guy and you say, hey, listen, this is the next thing that we're doing. If you don't know what the function of your other departments are that are underneath you, you can't properly prioritize which department when in order to get those things to happen. And you definitely can't decentralize command unless you have good relationships. So when you learn to be a better leader, you are looking for less replacements throughout your organization, because when you go to replace somebody, that is a massive cost. One of the things we talk about with police departments is that it is often cheaper to give everyone in your department a raise than it is to bring on one new officer. One new officer's got to go through the academy. They've got to go through onboarding. They've got to be fitted for gear. There are all of these costs associated with a new officer. It may be $40,000 to bring on a new officer into a department. If you want to retain the officers that you have, it might be $30,000 that you spread out over the course of, these 10 guys that's going to keep them in place so that you don't have to spend 40 to bring one in.
Yeah.
When we talk about the value that you get from the muster, like certainly there's a dollar amount that you can put on it because it is more cost effective than any of the other similarly marketed leadership conferences or whatever you want to call them. But when it comes to the practicality of it, I've been to some of those other things. They do not focus enough on the day-to-day things that are necessary to be a good leader. They talk about making a vision board and doing all those things, which can be fine.
Yeah.
But that's not $25,000 worth of value.
No, their focus is mainly, which is cool that people want this, hype and motivation.
Yeah.
But motivation doesn't get the job done. Discipline does.
Yeah.
And you can be as motivated as you want. If you don't have the skill sets to actually put into place, what good is that?
Yeah.
It reminds me of I make this correction all the time. People are like, knowledge is power. No, it's not. Knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that allows you to do powerful things. Motivation is great. Trust me, I get motivated a lot to do stuff. But if I lack the discipline to follow through, that motivation provided no value. I can be motivated to go do something, but if I don't have the capabilities, then I can't actually do anything with that motivation. I have the motivation to go deadlift 500 pounds. Guess what I do not have the capabilities of doing right now? Deadlifting 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you're going to say. You're like, well, we can get you there. I know, probably.
I wasn't. I was going to say this is exactly my argument against my blue belt, but go ahead.
Shut up. That's a tangible thing. Me pulling 500 pounds, we're going to have to change everything in my life.
Just
you getting your blue belt, you don't need to change everything in your
some
life.
things, yeah.
Not everything.
No, not everything.
Yeah. All it requires is 1% more discipline to go to Jiu-Jitsu
Maybe
once a week.
5% more discipline, whatever it is.
Whatever. But yeah, okay. So I'm glad. I just wanted your perspective on the muster because at Echelon Front, today we had an ELT call and it was a great call of like, hey, what are we doing? Where do we want to go? Impact, reach, growth. Got it. Hey, what does that look like? And us, for one of the big ones where we know we have a great amount of impact and reach, which helps with growth, is the muster, is getting people to the muster, them understanding the value of the muster. And I mean, okay, cool. This is not legal tax advice, but it's a business expense.
Yeah.
So talk to your tax accountant in regards to what you can do with business expenses in regards to write-offs. I'm not saying you can, but you can.
Yeah, and it's not a, again, it's not a flash in the pan takeaway either.
But there are also people that cannot afford it, and I respect that. I've been there. I get it. And one of the things I've loved, sorry to interrupt that Jocko and Leif have said since day one, the very beginning get-go of the musters, is because people were asking like, oh, I can't afford it. Should I get a credit card to go? Every other group out there that's doing these events, they tell people you need to go all in and max out your credit cards and make it here because it's going to change your life. I can confidently say that knowing what the muster provides because I've seen it change people's lives and marriages and businesses.
Yeah.
We had a guy come to an FTX, a 2-day individual FTX. It was actually the second one we ever did. It was in San Diego. And he sent me a message months later that the return on the return on the investment was well worth it because the cost of going to FTX is a little bit more than a muster.
It's a lot more. You get a lot more individual attention.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
small
there's
group.
the difference between 40 people and 1,000.
Yeah, and back then it was only I think we only had 24 people at the muster.
Yeah,
at the FTX, but and so he paid for his FTX, and months later, his business was $6 million ahead of where it was projected to be because he said he took that handbook that we provide at the FTX for all the debriefs and the talking points and the feedback from the instructors and all that stuff, right? He took it, and every single day after the FTX, he would read through the whole thing to start his day to frame his mind in regards to what he needed to be doing as a leader. And not even, I mean, even if it took 2 years, it wasn't a year. I don't even think it was 9 months, man. His business was $6 million ahead of where it was projected to be. And, which I think is more valuable, he said his marriage was healthier than it had ever been, and that him and his wife were more giving than they had ever been, and their family was in the best position that it had ever been. Okay, that value is unreal. So I just wanted your, just little recap on that. Because I know you've also been in the FTX, and there's so many things we do at Echelon Front. Okay, why am I talking about all this? Why am I talking about this on the 100th episode? Because the foundation of what we do here on the podcast is to help grow the kingdom and provide value to our listeners and also help grow Echelon Front.
100%, man.
And that's one of the things that you and I have been talking about, because we've been getting questions and feedback from people on the podcast. It's like, hey, what do we do next with the podcast? Like, I mean, I would like us to keep doing them weekly.
Yeah.
It's something we got to evaluate with our listeners. Like, hey, is it something you guys want? Do you guys want them weekly? Would there be more value if it was bi-weekly? Do you want them longer? Do you want them shorter? Do you want more interviews? Like, what do you want? And
Less Lucas.
So I think, I know I interrupted you and I want to hear your thoughts because you have some more stuff written down, but I also want our listeners to think like, hey, what do you guys want from this?
Yeah.
Because we do this for the listeners. We're not doing it for you and I to talk.
No, if we want to talk, we'll go have steak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or, dude, that Mexican place across the street is so good.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. Go ahead. Is it bustin'?
Bustin'.
It's bustin'. Yeah, but that's one of the things about EF and the muster in particular that I think are really important is that, okay, if you can't go to the muster, there are other resources, right? You've got both of the new editions of Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership, which have Q&A sections in the back that come from people asking questions on the podcast or on the muster. You have the EO Academy, which has not just the videos of or the video seminars or the video classrooms that you guys do, but also the live call that happens 1:00 Central Time every Monday. Then there are the podcasts. There's Jocko's podcast. There's the Lead Win podcast. There's our podcast that you can use as resources to become part of that group and that community where you can get plugged in and you can figure out how to do this and get in the game. But then there's also the community around all of those things. There's Facebook groups that are dedicated to extreme ownership. There are Reddit pages that are dedicated to it. If you look on our YouTube channel or Jocko's YouTube channel or the Echelon Front YouTube channel, there are a lot of people that are discussing the ideas that they heard or that they learned about in there and helping one another out with different situation reports and all of those kinds of things. And I think that's really, where the power in all of this resides, is that you can go to a massive investment, which there are different levels of, right? You can go to a muster, which is a great thing. You can go to one of the roll calls, which is an awesome thing.
Yep.
But you can also go to the council,
FTX,
the battlefield, right? So those are smaller groups that have higher price points. FTX is the same thing. You got a little bit of a smaller group. You got a higher price point. You can go to the muster, any of that stuff. But you're like, all right, well, how do I do this? Man, the very first copy of Extreme Ownership that I got was a $13 copy that I got at a Half Price Books.
Let's go.
And I will tell you, that was the first copy of Extreme Ownership that I got, and this will go back, kind of back to the origins of the podcast, which is one of the things I wanted us to talk about. Is, I joke that the very first time we met each other that we were summarily unimpressed with one another. I don't know that was necessarily the case, but it's a fun way to tell the story. That you saw the guy with the long hair and the big beard, and you're like, all right, this guy can, okay, you can run our podcast, whatever. But the truth was that we didn't know anything about each other.
No.
The very first time that you came into the podcast studio for Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu episode 1 was the first time that we had laid eyes on each other, the very first time that we met one another, and we knew nothing about each other other than what a mutual friend that we both trusted had said to us about the other person. And as much as I love Isaac really loves his friends. And so I was also like,
oh, he's hyping this dude up way.
So, like 100%. I was like, okay, I'm going to meet this guy, but everybody that I'm about to meet has been hyped up. So It's cool. They're all okay. They've passed they've passed muster, but now it's time to figure out, whether or not we're going to have like legit friend relationships, or if this is just going to be something that ends up being a podcast to reproduce. And really in those conversations after the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu episodes, where we scrapped an episode early on because of the way that the discussion went, and we were talking about it. We were like, nope, this isn't it. And that 20-minute conversation that we had, where we're like, all right, well, there's an hour and a half that's not usable anymore. So now when are we going to get back in here to do this? Seeing where the values and things aligned. And one of the big things for me was I had no experience with anything Echelon Front related. I had a little experience listening to some other Navy SEALs. And so several people had recommended Jocko's podcast to me. Several people had recommended the Echelon Front books. And I was not interested because, I grew up in Texas, and the football coaches in Texas, they're just as good at yelling at people as every drill instructor I've ever seen in every movie I've ever seen. And from every Navy SEAL that I had seen online, telling me about how much harder than I needed to work with all these 4-letter words. And I was like, I don't really need any more of that in my life. Like I grew up around enough of it. Yeah. So that was it. But after meeting you and actually getting to develop a relationship and getting to have conversations with you about leadership and all of this stuff, before I invested in that book at Half Price Books, I listened to Extreme Ownership on the library app, because my thought was, these jokers aren't going to get any of my money if this is just another one of those things. Yeah. And I have to date given away probably 50 copies of Extreme Ownership.
That's awesome, man.
Right. And now we've got 4 more on the shelves. When Amazon did their Prime Day and they were selling for $9 a piece, I was like, well, there you go. Crazy. Limit 4. It's like, cool. Well, I guess I'm going to have to get another email address. Right. So, but like legitimately, and I've got copies of it. And if there are small business owners that come to our church or that we interact with at the different chambers of commerce that we're a part of, or if there are executives or law enforcement, first responders, and people that are like, hey, what are the books that I need to read on leadership? Pastors that are asking me like, hey, what are the leadership books that I need to read? I've got a group right now of young pastors that we're going through a couple of books on pastoring. And one of the things that every one of them has, because I gave it to them, is a copy of Extreme Ownership. I was like, because these are like the things that we're going through, are the spiritual lessons that you need to know. This is the book that puts all of those lessons into practical language, so that you will have a better understanding of how to do all of those things. So I just want to start by saying, when we talk about the origins of the podcast, I was not an Extreme Ownership zealot. I was not a Jocko fanboy the first time that I met JP. The first time I met JP, I was like, if this dude comes in here and starts talking to me about running and carrying stuff and whatever, like, I'm just going to puke and tell Isaac that this isn't going to work. But that wasn't the case at all. And the more I've gotten to know you and other guys in the SEAL community, those guys tend to be the outliers that are doing things for the attention. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that, like, the practicality of what you guys do, the authenticity of it, and the preparation that's behind it, the way that you care for your people and all of those kinds of things. Because, again, it took us a year before you finally came to me after you'd been mulling over the idea and were like, hey, I think I want to do a podcast. When you had that conversation with me, I was fully prepared to try to help you put together a package so that you could do a podcast with whoever you wanted to do it with. And finally, after explaining some things to me, you were like, no, I want to do the podcast with you. I was like, oh, well, that's a different conversation entirely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So, what do you think the path looks like going forward for the podcast based off of feedback that we've gotten? I mean, I think it would be awesome for the listeners, jump on Instagram and let us know what you think. Yeah. Because that's going to sway our path and our decisions on the direction.
Because it's got to be stuff that you guys, if nobody's listening, there's no use of us just like talking to each other and screaming into the vortex of the internet, hoping that someone's listening. Right. Yeah. I once heard Twitter
talking
described
about what time
way.
it is right before we start every time, and you just hold on to those clips for a Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah. That's one of those things. Like, everybody's got their own little corner of the internet that they want to create, but most of it is just all of us shouting into an empty room. And so we're not, for whatever reason, people have enjoyed listening to us do this. They've gotten value out of it. What I really want to see, and especially as Jocko's podcast is morphing into more of like the leadership manual stuff, which I think, having seen the structure of it now and all that, like super valuable, but very different than what he did before. And it's a cool new evolution or iteration of what he's doing. I think that there are some areas of that where there's like a void that's been left. And so I'd be curious as to like maybe what parts of that we naturally move into, right? I don't think that either one of us are the ones that like we want to cover deep, dark war stories on every episode. Yeah, like that's not our vibe. Yeah, listening to somebody else do it is enough during my workout to like get me through. And then after that, I'm like, you know what I'm going to listen to? I'm going to listen to that Lemonade song by Forrest Frank and the Pigs and like get my mind off of everything I just heard, right? I don't want to live in that place. But one of the things I think has been really cool over the course of the last 100 episodes, the last 99 episodes is 100, is seeing the way that the relationships we've built over the course of the podcast have kind of matured, right? Even within the last few weeks, thinking about Ethan Bernard and getting to celebrate the victories and stuff with him.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, just so cool. Now he's down into the 400, from 660 pounds, now he's into the 480s, right?
489, let's go.
That's, absolutely nuts. The last time he was mentioned, the last time he was there, it might have been middle school or high school, right? So it's been a decade since he's been that low on the scale. And so getting to celebrate those little victories with those guys, getting to see what guys like Ryan Parrott are doing with their charities and all of that.
Yeah. And me running into him at the airport the other day was awesome. He had just gotten home. I was headed out. I was like, that looks like Ryan. But he's just walking, head down, hat on. I'm like, and I like leaned down and in front. I'm like, Ryan? He's like, what? And we had a great conversation.
Yeah.
And so I've really valued, just being able to have buddies on here and share their stories. Like, last week's episode with Joe Reyna was
great. Yeah.
It was so good. I mean, I know you've probably gotten some. I've gotten a lot of messages about Pastor Tyron.
Yeah.
My Aunt CJ just texted me about it, listen to it. I think she said she re-listened to it again to like dive deeper into some of those things. And, I was getting ready, to have him back on the podcast and dive deeper into a lot of things is going to be awesome. So maybe that's something our listeners could do is like give us some guests, like legitimate guests that I know you've read the emails that I've gotten where they're just straight up copy and paste like, like, I really like your podcast. And you didn't even listen
to episode 98 so that and I'll quote it so that you didn't. I'm like, no, bro, you got something from the transcript.
Nice try.
Yeah.
Valid effort, however, great. But, from our actual listeners who are like listening to the episodes, engaging with us on YouTube, engaging with us on social media, who are some people that you guys want us to connect with? And if you have those connections, awesome. I was at a birthday party for Mike Mitchell's daughter this weekend. And his stepdad was asking me about the podcast and how it was going. And he was like, I have this young man that I'd love to have on the podcast, was sharing with me his story, sent a YouTube video to Mike to send to me so I could watch it. And
That's
he was
cool.
like, having connection with this guy. And I'm like, that's awesome. This would be someone we'd like to have.
Yeah.
I was talking with Dakota Meyer recently and, he wants to be able to come on the podcast as well.
That'd be great.
It's going to be an awesome episode. Leif Babin wants to as well. We're going to review Dave Burke's book with him. We can get Dave on the podcast.
We need to make sure that because this is one of the other things that I would like to see, and I'm sure this will come with much consternation from your side, is leaning a little bit more into our personalities with some things. Like when Leif comes, I want to be full on Larry Babbins. I want which, for those of you who don't know, was a post haircut and shave joke that I looked like Leif's fat, unathletic nephew. But
oh goodness,
no, but there's some of those things, man. Yeah, absolutely, Leif, Dave. We've been contacted by some incredible people. To come on, and we're trying to work some of the logistics of those things out. We were contacted by a lady who was a survivor of the Rwandan massacre. She was a child whenever it happened, right? And her whole family, like now she's, I think she was very young. She was staying with relatives, and she wrote a book about it, which I've got, and we're kind of working through, because her writing style is more poetic. Like she like writes in prose, so it's really interesting. And so it's not like the typical thing, because she's writing it almost in like what we would think of the style of like the Iliad or the Odyssey. Like that's the way that she views this story. And so she sort of like writes each chapter as its own poem as she's going through it, because that was the easiest way for her to process everything.
Wow.
But now she's, she was 5 or something in the early 90s whenever that happened. So now she's almost 40. And the only thing she knows about her family members are the stories that she grew up with.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. She was staying with somebody else whenever it happened, and she wants to come on the podcast and like tell that story. And yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so like those kind of things, yeah, we've got so many people who have reached out with so many amazing stories to tell, that I think that's one of the things we've got to
really capitalize on and focus on.
Yeah.
Sal Frisella from First Form said he'll fly down to do it. I was like, dude, you're busy. We can do it over Zoom. He's like, no, I think it would be cooler in person. I'm like, okay.
Okay, cool.
So he wants to bring his wife down, do a little weekend trip, stay with Amanda and I, come record. Pete Roberts said the same thing.
I need Maddie West to make me a Jocko Fuel shirt that's got Jocko Fuel in huge letters whenever Sal comes, and we'll just hand it to him. Yeah.
Pete Roberts,
would love
same
to have
thing.
him. Bring some sandals, Pete. I want to see them. They're coming out.
When this is out.
Yeah,
it's
they'll
actually
be by the time this is out.
Oh yeah, for sure. As we're recording this, they actually come out on Wednesday.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of really good paths that we can take, and ultimately, I mean, God's going to direct us down which path is going to be best for us. But I think some of that guidance should and can come from our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
what do y'all want?
I had somebody ask me, it was at an event. This guy was awesome. He was wearing the Origin jeans,
Nice.
Origin boots, his company polo, Origin belt.
Whoa.
I know, I noticed all those little things, and so we were talking.
You're really checking this guy out.
Well, I'm aware of my surroundings, Lucas.
Situational awareness.
Yeah,
that's
it's
what
called
it's called.
situational awareness.
I know what it is.
And it's really easy for me to identify the boots and belt. And then it was crazy. Is like I can look at a pair of jeans, and if they're Origin, I can tell by the stitching.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They've got the
which
triple
is
stitch
awesome.
that they've got is very cool.
But I was talking with this guy, and he had mentioned, he's like, it'd be cool if, like, for your listeners, you offered up, like, once a year, like a little get together, where, you do like a shoot and all this stuff, and to raise money for the podcast and other charities. And I was like, okay, that's a great idea. These are the things that I want to hear.
100%.
Because in my brain, those are the things I want to do. But then I also wonder, like, does anybody else really want to do that? It's crazy, those self-imposed limitations. Because I know as I'm saying this, I'm watching your face, and you're like, you're an idiot.
No,
because people
would never
want
say such a thing.
Yeah,
I don't use that kind of vocabulary.
You know what's nice about that suit jacket you're wearing?
What? It's got lapels.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been watching you look at him the entire episode.
Yeah.
Just like I could choke him so easy right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but those are all awesome things. Having an official NCC get together would be incredible.
We'll call it that.
Yeah.
But,
So but all of that stuff, like those are all things that would be a blast to get to do. And one of the things I don't think our listeners know is that there was a point when we were talking about this where the entire idea of the podcast, which has gone through some different iterations, was to deliver value by people telling impactful stories and like the defining moments of their lives. And I think we have nailed that kind of as we've gone through it. One of the things that I've heard often is people are wanting more of those things specifically from you. They add me on because I think they're nice. They're like, I'd like to hear them from JP. Also, if you had a couple, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's very sweet. But that's the thing, is that there are a lot of things that kind of led you to this point. And not everybody's listened to those Jocko podcasts.
Yeah.
And there are some of those things that, as we've talked about it, they've come out in bits and pieces and other things. And so I do think that there's a lot of merit to getting some of those stories, but also getting some of those guys that we've talked about, that guys like Benny.
Yeah.
That we have the opportunity to, and I think I've talked about this before, about Butch, Kirsten's great granddad, who,
Yes.
they
Yeah,
essentially
actually, a few episodes ago.
Yeah, we kind of had to pull, or they had to pull all of those stories out of him. Yeah. But, those guys in particular, one of the things I would love for our podcast to be is a place where those stories could be told respectfully and with the honor that they deserve, if for no other reason than to preserve them for, the generations that followed them, not just in military service, but also as their kids.
Yeah. Yeah, as you're saying that, I was just thinking kids, I was always like in the back of my mind doing this podcast, I was like, man, maybe one day Hayden will listen to these podcasts and know about me.
That's it, man.
And then God opened the door in September for his mom to reach out to me, and we got reconnected. And, a few weeks ago, he was here for a whole week.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. Like the kids, like instant best friends. And it was such an awesome time. And I'm just so thankful for God's grace and his redemption and how he can restore anything.
Yeah.
And, that was something I always thought about every episode.
Yeah.
I just was hoping that one day he would maybe listen to some of them or come across them and know about me. But God's timing was incredible. And, now I don't really have to think about that because my son knows me and we have a relationship, and we have our family group text with Amanda, Aiden, Hayden, Cora, and Nola. And then I was talking with Cora yesterday, and she goes, "Have you talked to Hayden today?" I'm like, "Yeah, we were texting." I'm like, "Have you?" She goes, "Yeah, we're in a group text." And I was like thinking about, like, nothing's gone off in the family group text. And then I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh, do you have one with just him and Nola?" And she goes, "Yeah, I have one with just him, Nola, and I. And then we have one with Aiden, Hayden, Nola, and I." And bro, like, I had to like walk away because I didn't want Cora to like see me crying because I was just so like joyful that like that was happening.
Being part of the kids text is a big deal, man.
Dude, that was so cool. And what's also been awesome is like Amanda and I being able to grow that friendship with his mom.
Yeah.
And the three of us in texting about kid stuff and funny life stuff, and some of them I'm just like cracking up, or Amanda will be laughing and I'll look down and say, "Oh, it's Hayden's mom and Amanda and me," and I have like 5 unread text messages in that group text, and that's what she's laughing about. And so it's been cool to see that shift. And if we could provide that for somebody else, to where they can share their stories, and one day their kids or grandkids get to hear like about their life and know about that person. And someone like Benny, who I know is super humble and probably hasn't told his kids a lot of the heroic things that he did, and if he decides to come on the podcast and open up about any of those things, or I share stories and he chimes in and listens, like maybe one day his kids can hear that and be like, wow, I had no idea my dad was an absolute legend in the SEAL teams. So,
and that's so often and I'm in the midst of a couple of weeks where we've averaged a couple of funerals a week, as we've put people that were people that were close to us or to our church, or that are just absolute just gems of humanity in our community, and that they've gone to be with the Lord. That there's so many of those stories that don't get told until a memorial service or a funeral service or a celebration of life or whatever you want to call it. And if we could be a place where people got to do that before then, that'd be awesome. And with folks like Danny Ziem, right, and Rob Jones, who we need to have back on, because his kids are going to want to know things. But in particular, like those guys that you served with, that there are going to be stories that only you can get out of them. And that those kind of things. After Levi was in the NICU, a lot of people told us that, like, oh, whenever you have your first kid, you need a journal, right? And Levi came 9 weeks early, and there was no journaling. because we were trying to survive as parents. We were trying to figure out how we were going to make it work financially. We were trying to figure out how we were going to manage our own emotions, manage each other's emotions, and with the up and down, and there were a couple of times where things with Levi were pretty touch and go. We didn't have the capacity of the bandwidth to journal.
Yeah.
But I did. There was a recording that I made where I tell the story, and we put it out, and the amount of people who just reached out and were like, "This is a beautiful love letter to your son." That like one day, no matter what's going on in your relationship, no matter what is happening, one day he's gonna hear this, and it's gonna mean something to him.
Yeah.
That when we've talked about this with the podcast too, is that this for us is a way to not just impart lessons on other people, but for our kids and our family members, and the people that we care about the most, to see the good, the bad, the lessons that we've learned, the things that we've done, and that it would help and propel them to make them better. And being able to have a platform, because people have responded to it, to have a platform to help others do the same thing, because Rob Jones' kids are going to listen to his episode one day.
Yeah.
Danny's kids are going to listen to his episode one day. Mike Mitchell's kids are going to listen to the stuff from Mike. And those stories that they tell may never be stories that they tell their kids, but that somewhere along the lines, Danny's kids are going to stumble onto, young, dumb, and full of inspiration, and listen to the stuff that that their dad did, that there are going to be moments where, Mike's daughters listen to the stories that he told about the brave men and women that he served with in, that light armor division, who will never be recognized by anyone other than him.
That's great.
And the other guys that he served with, and realize, that their dad, as goofy as he is, was an absolute hero and led men and saved lives in that, and just did some incredible things. And even though the history books may never have them written in there, giving those guys the platform to tell the story, so that their kids, their loved ones, and that the other men and women who are coming behind them, who want to serve, will see that and be inspired by them. And that young leaders and people like me, we jokingly have created this term, the NCC, is the non-commissioned civilian, but I wasn't called into service. God's calling on my life was much different than that. And even though it was something that I wanted to do, I was called away from it in order to do what he had for me.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people that are in that same boat, but not only can we take inspiration from those stories, we can take lessons from those stories, and more than that, we can take away the need to care for the people that are coming home that have those same stories from every deployment and in every branch of the military, at every opportunity that we have. Like, hey, you know what? I wasn't called to serve, but I can definitely serve the people who did. Yeah. So,
yeah. That's one of the things I like to be able to just share with people that I meet at workshops because of Echelon Front. And, a lot of people are like, man, I wish I would have served, or hey, I was going to serve, but, I got medically disqualified, and they have like a little bit of shame and regret. And I always try to explain to them, like, hey, you can still serve. And then I also explain to them, like, hey, you went down the path that you're supposed to, and if not, you're at least now doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You should, be thankful for the opportunities that you have. And if you really still have like this just strange, large amount of guilt and or, the desire to serve, you can still serve others. Mm-hmm. You can serve people at your church. You can give back to your first responders. You can, give back to military and veterans. Like, there's a lot that you can do. I just hate when people hold on to that, like, man, I never did it and I wish I would have. There's a lot of things in my life I wish I would have done. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of things in my life I wish I would not have done. And we can't get sucked into those things. You can't live in that
in
circle.
The what if.
Yeah. That's a dangerous place. A lot of people assume my dad served in the military because of how he looks and, just
Your dad's a freaking unit, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then now, since the amputation a few years ago of his left arm, like people assume that was because of the military. And I love that my dad's response now is, like, no, I never served in the military. It wasn't, God's plan for him. He goes, but I was busy raising warriors because my sister, my brother, and I all served in the military.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a cool posture to have of being like, yeah, I didn't serve. I wish I would have, but I did what God wanted me to do, and this is what I also was able to do.
And he was surrounded by people who were in service, and it's not like if the opportunity was there, he wouldn't have taken it or one thing or the other. He just knew God had something different for him,
and God did. And there was even a time where he was strongly feeling like he should be in the military. No, he was not considering it, like going through the process.
Oh, really?
Getting the age waiver.
Oh, that's right. He was training to
go to Buds.
Yeah,
with my uncle
in his 30s.
Yeah, and like talk about freaking physical phenoms. Him and my uncle at the time training together, like unreal.
That's crazy.
Unreal. And it just at the time there wasn't a need, and so the age waivers didn't get approved.
Thank the Lord. Just because it was His will.
Yeah,
right. For no reason.
I know. So.
But that is such a cool posture to have. I was busy raising warriors because he did, and the three of y'all are just freaking brilliant.
My mom, same thing. She's always been very content with the path that the Lord had for her, and her, raising us kids.
She makes a mean chicken pot pie,
bro. Wait, I need to have her make her chicken enchiladas.
Okay, I'm not gonna fight you.
Anybody that's had it knows exactly what I'm talking about right now. But her.
That's what we should do for the 101st episode is just review your mom's chicken enchiladas.
That'd be amazing. But her, doing everything she could to, raise the kids and, support my dad when he's working and take care of the household and work, any jobs that she could that didn't conflict with the schedules for school and work and all that stuff. And it was just like doing what she had to do and doing what she loved. Well, that's the other thing is like my parents always found joy in what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to close on that before you close it out is my parents were able to find joy in what they did because their joy came from the Lord. My parents were able to find joy in all the things that they did because their joy came from the Lord, their relationship with the Lord, their salvation, being in church, involved in church, raising kids in the church, spending time with the Lord, reading the word, listening to praise and worship, teaching us how to do those things. And if you don't have that, you're always going to be chasing something. So, what you got?
Well, now that we've made it to 100 episodes, thank y'all for your support. This is nearly 2 years of the JP Dinnell podcast, and so many of you have been day one listeners and day one NCCs, if you will. Thank you, and thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, thanks for all of your comments, all of your encouragement, and I'm really stoked to see where this goes from here on out. And if you want to tell us where you want it to go, so that we can take your considerations into the equation, go check us out on Instagram. I'm at Lucas Pinker. JP is at JP Dinnell, 2 N's, 2 L's. And go look at the at JP Dinnell podcast where we're posting all kinds of stuff from previous episodes if you want some bite-sized stories. We've got a partnership with the people over at First in Nutrition. They help us deliver you hump day health hacks every week. And if you want to go check them out, go to firstinnutrition.com/JPpod and you'll get 4 free weeks of nutrition coaching from some of the folks that are the best in the game because they follow the principles of Echelon Front. Yep. They are keen in on the laws of combat. And if you want to, see what Jonathan and Ann are all about, get on that Echelon Front Academy. Go check out some of the online classes that they've got. Be on that 1 o'clock Central Time call on Monday for that EF Academy live that's going on. And you'll see Jonathan and Ann from First in Nutrition there every week. You'll also see some cameo appearances from several of the guests who have been on the show, like Rob Jones, like Cody Gandy, like JP Dinnell, that'll come in, not just teach, but also be part of those classes because they're in on it. If you don't have the books already, go get them. Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership. We talked about them a little bit today. They've got the Q&As in the back that answer a lot of the questions that are typical that people have, whether at the muster or that you see them ask Jocko and Leif online. They've got the answers to those questions in the back of the book. It's kind of like whenever you were in algebra class and like all the odd numbered answers were in the back of the book. So you just go back there and do a little cheateration, check your work. It's in there. Go check them out at the back of the book. It'll be awesome. The new part of the trilogy, though, the need to lead, which just makes me think of Kenny Loggins every time. Like that song just fires off in my head, by Dave Burke. Pre-orders are going on now. That'll be out in October. It is in what we are calling Afterburner Orange cover. Did you do you have your new ARC copy yet? Your advanced reader copy? It's on its way. So go check those things out. Go pick those things up. JP is also a partner in a Texas beef and tallow company called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
That's what I'm talking about. You can go check them out at littlecattle.co. And at Little Cattle Co, there are some steaks. There are the, what do they call it? The Apex Predator blend, which is 80% ground beef and 20% of the liver, the kidney, the organs, all of the things that keep you on the path and going well. And then they got a bunch of beef tallow products. They've got beef sticks. They've got the invigorating coffee body scrub, which has not made my hair grow back, but it does make me smell nice. So
there you go.
I'll take that. After sun care, anti-itch cream, lip balm, all of the stuff that you need. If you want to be a wholesaler for any of that stuff, you can email amanda@littlecattle.co. And when you are fueled up on all of your beef products, then you can go and snag you a shirt from On the Path Printing. On the Path Printing is at On the Path Printing on Instagram. They print all of your apparel stuff. They get some hoodies and stuff that are coming out. NCC shirts are on the way. Some of the new Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu shirts coming from On the Path. You can check that stuff out. Then Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu is a ministry that JP and I belong to. We talked about Isaac. We talked about our origin story, which goes all the way back to is it a podcast origin story, like a superhero's origin story? Like, is this it? What you don't know is I'm about to rip open this shirt and show you that I really do have superpowers. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
I don't have a replacement for this shirt to go with this jacket. So anyway, Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, we started that ministry, or they started that ministry a few years ago. I got to come on board in early 2023, and we do regularly scheduled events, not just in the DFW area anymore, across the U.S.
We have one coming up in September, so if they're following on social media, on Instagram.
Yep, at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA. We bring in a high-level black belt to teach a seminar, and then have someone share their testimony, and then we wrap it up with just an awesome time of open roll and fellowship. Our Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu devotionals sold out within 24 hours. That whole first batch is gone. Less than 24 hours, they're already all sold out. We way underestimated what the demand for those was going to be. So we'll have more of those coming in, but it's a 24-week devotional that you can do. Super awesome. So be on the lookout. More of those are coming in. Also, if you are, the week that this is coming out, if you are around at Jiu-Jitsu Con, come check out the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu booth over at Jiu-Jitsu Con. And finally, when it comes to this stuff, there is a company that can get you all of the things. You know what? You read about the stories in Extreme Ownership and in Dichotomy of Leadership, and you think, wow, how did these guys do that? What equipment did they use? What kind of gear do you need to have in order to make these kind of things happen? Well, go over to at Bruiser Arms, and Jocko, Leif, and JP will show you. They got classes that you can get. They got custom gear packages that you can get. And all of this stuff is made possible by the fine folks over at Jocko Fuel and at Origin. They keep us clothed and they keep us fueled. It's the cleanest fuel in the game. You got creatine. You got the sleep aid. You also have the magnesium, which I have discovered is actually the best thing for heartburn. Is magnesium, because it's not because your stomach is too acidic, according to my gastroentomologist. It is because the muscles in my throat are restricted. So take a little magnesium, and not only does it help you sleep, it helps you with heartburn. Who knew? Such a crazy thing. Also, the Jocko Fuel energy drinks, the Jocko Hydrates, which Levi just refers to as juice because we're not giving him a bunch of sugar stuff. But you know, do you want some electrolytes? Get out there and go play. Have at it. And then the fine folks over at Origin, where if you want to be geared up like our dude, you can go ahead and do that. JP is sporting an Origin shirt right now.
Origin short.
Yeah, Origin
shirt and Origin shorts.
And soon, the Origin flip-flops. And if you go follow them at Origin USA on Instagram, they've got some incredible stuff if you go and you're part of their insiders messaging, because you can find out about products that are about to come out, like their black button-up work shirts, their work jacket, which is the Moab jacket, which looks freaking incredible.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, and the Origin sneaker, which is being partially designed by the guy who helped Phil McKnight design the shoes over at Nike that made Nike a multi-million-dollar conglomerate. Between that guy and Pete Roberts, that whole team that Pete has assembled is absolutely awesome. Also, the Origin backpack is coming out, which I'm really stoked about.
And the fanny pack.
Mm-hmm. Which he's trying to get a good acronym for that. And I don't know. He's had a couple that he's thrown out there, but he doesn't know. He's been crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
He's thinking about calling it like the MERS, or there were a couple of other things. And he was like, if you can find a good acronym for these, and he threw out some names. So yeah, you want to participate and tell Pete how he should name his products? Do it. Get on Instagram, be a part of it.
Awesome.
At Jocko Fuel, if you use code JPPod20, it'll save you 20% on all your stuff. And now I'll hand it over to you for final thoughts from episode 100, really final thoughts from 100 episodes of the JP Dinnell podcast.
Yeah, my final thoughts would be thank you for all the support. And, the intent behind the podcast was to provide value. And, I've mentioned this a few times over the years, just also for me to be able to honor my teammates and the people in my life that have just poured into me. And so I would challenge each and every one of you to go out there and live a life worthy of their sacrifices, for all the people that have poured into you, and go out there and be the example that the world needs. So I hope this episode has been a reminder to go do the work that is needed, to put in the effort, to build your legacy, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 100.